Welcome to ecotopiaumedia. I'm your host, Melissa McGinnis, joined by my co-host, Tom Wright, and we have a very, very special guest today, Brenda Platt. She's the co-director for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. And currently, you're focusing on sustainable plastics and, composting makes sense projects. Is that correct?
You got it, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
All right, so, well, composting is very important. I'll start with composting, then we'll get to sustainable plastics. But, you know, half of what we set out the curb every week is readily compostable, or could be. And, you know, certainly should not be landfilled or incinerated in trash burners. And there are a number of communities that have started curbside collection programs for composting and are developing composting infrastructure. So, you know, reducing urban trash is a big driver for that. But I think even more important reason to compost is we need healthy soil. The most recent statistics indicate that 28% of U.S. cropland is eroding above soil tolerance levels, which means that the long-term ability of that land to sustain crops in the future is in jeopardy. I don't know about you, but I find that pretty scary.
You know, it's very, the whole I mean, as you know, I've been in the organic food businesses for 40 years.
Yeah.
And so it's stunning to me that regenerative organic agriculture isn't more of a norm, because regenerative soils, it just makes common sense to, right? It just,
right.
Why would you want degenerative soils? You know, right. So, yeah.
Yeah, and soils need organic matter. I mean, that's what compost is. It's a soil amendment that's rich in humus, and humus is like this aggregator, this glue that binds soil particles together. So we need, you know, anything that once grew in the ground could be returned to the ground. And so we really need that compost, that organic matter added to the soil, and for all reasons. I mean, to stop soil erosion, for soil fertility, improving soil structure. It helps soil retain water, which, whether you're talking about drought conditions like California's in, or big storm events, you know, whether it's hurricanes or storms, you don't want it all washing away. It helps it stay in place. So it's really, really critical to have compost and organic matter in soils. And we've done a lot of work on that. And we're seeing composting you know, growing and advancing, especially in certain regions of the country, less so in others, but the potential to grow composting is huge. I've been doing a lot of studies recently on the job benefits. So looking at comparing, if you compost, you know, you throw 10,000 tons of organic material into an incinerator or landfill, you create one job. But if you send it to a compost facility, you may create 4 times that amount. But then when you make new compost and you're using it in, you know, compost blankets on highways or rain gardens and, you know, things like that, it's another, you know, number of jobs. So, and then when you look at it in the $1 million invested in landfilling, incinerators versus composting, composting is like creates 17 times more jobs on the capital investment. So it's kind of a win-win on so many levels. Now let's look at what's happening. There are a lot of great cities that are doing amazing things on composting, but a lot of those tend to be going to just regional centralized facilities, when we know that composting can be small scale and large scale and everything in between. So our, I think, unique lens is promoting a diverse infrastructure and having some of those programs be rooted in the community. So we've launched, for instance, a neighborhood soil rebuilders composter training program, and we're recruiting community leaders from schools, urban farms, community gardens, so they know how to compost within the community and can build this culture of composting know-how. And, you know, at schools, it's really important, because young composters become old composters. And so this is how, you know, we get the next generation to really understand the importance and how to do these things and where our food comes from. The relation to plastics, I think, is very strong, because we, as a nation, are recovering about 60% of our yard trimmings, but only like 4% of the food waste. And, you know, so we have so much more opportunity to capture more food waste. But if we look at the foodware and the packaging that the food waste comes in, or the food comes in, I should say. The food waste doesn't come in packaging. No, it's single-use disposable crap, honestly. And it's not highly recycled, although the industry would like us to believe that it is. Styrofoam has been, a pervasive part of the food serviceware industry, and that's polystyrene. It's number 6, folks, number 6 resin code. Get out your reading glasses, because the industry purposely makes it too small so you won't be able to read it. But that's polystyrene. So the red Solo cups, the blue Solo cups, the yellow Solo cups that are very popular on campuses, that's polystyrene, the same stuff as styrofoam. It's a health hazard, and you can't do anything with it. So sustainable plastics. Okay, so I kind of think that's an oxymoron. But plastics, the history of plastics, the first plastics, what a lot of people don't know, they were actually bio-based plastics. They were cotton-derived. They were, nylons were made from, more cellulosic materials. Actually, they were highly flammable, which was an issue. But it only was in the 50s and 60s following World War II that the plastics moved to fossil fuel based, and that we saw this proliferation of single-use disposable plastics, which is, by some statistics, half of what we a third of what we put in the garbage is, packaging, a large part of which is from plastics. So I've been following the kind of new innovative plastics that have been on the market more recently that are either compostable or bio-based, and those two things are actually different. A lot of people don't understand that. If you think something's bio-based, made from a plant-derived material, you think, oh, well, it's got to be compostable. Well, not true. It's really that bio-based, plant-based origin is just new carbon versus the fossil fuels, which is old carbon. But even old carbon can be designed to be compostable and meet compostable standards. So the two are different. I know it may sound complicated.
No, it's actually worth describing to people.
Yeah.
I've had to do this a lot in my packaging wrap, is to explain that don't get confused about the source of the polymer. Understand what the next life of the polymer is.
Right.
And if the polymer is designed as a biological nutrient, it could come from a fossil-based source as well as a biological-based source, and vice versa. It could be designed as a recyclable and technical nutrient and come from a fossil-based source or a bio-based source.
Right.
Yeah, it's just one of these, people, they got to understand that the source and the next life are separate conversations.
Right.
And you have to understand the design.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what should a consumer look for? Does it have to be BPI compostable, or
how do you help people? Yeah.
Well, I think avoiding single-use products is a number one. And I actually, Melissa, prefer citizen rather than consumer. I think that's part of our problem, is that we think of ourselves as consumers, and I know I am, but I consume things, but I try, to, not to use single use. I actually have some props here. I mean, these may be so obvious, but,
No, go ahead. Please, be obvious.
I found this. I didn't buy it. My single-use water bottle, but I tend not to buy these. And these can be made from bio-based materials. And there's, some companies that are doing this. So they are 100% recyclable. PET, this one is not bio-based, by the way, but that's made in part from sugarcane from Brazil that's been converted, so 1/3 is bio-based and recyclable. But what's wrong with the single-use bottle? Well, it costs more money for the average citizen to buy this when we have very good drinking water in the U.S. and you could have, a bottle to fill up. And we're seeing a sea change in this. You go to airports now, you can actually, instead of struggling with the water fountain, fill up your bottle easily. And I hope that will become standard in many public venues so that we can avoid this. But, You know, I was actually in San Francisco last week, and I was at a startup company that does website design. And even though I don't see styrofoam in San Francisco because it's been banned, nothing prevented the startup company from buying styrofoam cups for their workers and putting it by their coffee, which I told the people there about it. But I couldn't believe it, even in San Francisco.
Even in San Francisco,
Even in
yes.
San Francisco, I hadn't seen styrofoam in so long. But you know, I learned I have to carry my coffee mug everywhere. Like even to zero waste events, gotta carry it everywhere.
Have you ever come into a coffee shop where you ask them to refill your mug and they stare back at you like you asked them an odd question?
It hasn't happened in a while, but
Okay, good. Yeah.
It's been a really long time since that's happened. But you know, just on the thread of durables, even though it's not plastics, I mean, a lot of people, buy, paper and this is about cost too. You know, buying water bottle now is not that cheap. You pay. Coffee is not that cheap. You can get a reduction. Buying paper towels for your house and paper napkins costs money, but having, a rag system with old towels, we don't buy paper towels, and my husband hates it. We have like 200 cloth napkins. My kids earn their allowance, they hate it too, by folding cloth napkins.
That's great.
So they're two teenagers, but they've earned a lot of money folding cloth napkins over the years. But my kids, talking about them, my oldest is 17. I bought cloth diapers with her, and the best thing about the cloth diapers is they're my rags. They have less.
As long as you didn't say they were your napkins, I was going to be okay with that.
No, but it's part of our rag system. It's completely clean. So, but it saves money.
Yeah.
It saves materials, it saved money, it saved us a lot of money over the years, and we continue to save money not buying single use. So that's really the first step. But then when you have to buy stuff, I'm a member of a humanistic group, and I buy all the compostable foodware for our events, even though I wish they had their own kitchen and place, but we rent out our space and we have to carry our stuff so we don't have a dishwasher. And then I composted it in my backyard, or now we have a curbside program. I put it in the curbside bin. So, there's the waste management hierarchy, and at the top, it's source reduction, but it's often paid lip service, in terms of where it's we should all reduce waste, but the incentives to do that are far and few between. And I think we really need to up our game and change the policies to make it not just people like me who are committed, but incentivize and educate everybody on how you save money and the environment, create jobs. What are the attributes that are going to benefit the community at large?
Well, I think you mentioned that saving money just in an individual household by just those couple of examples is a great incentive.
Yeah. And we have some communities now where on the composting front, we're trying to recommend that cities prioritize backyard composting and training people how to do that, giving bins at half price or for free, and then community-based composting. And, I didn't mean to ding my colleagues that I know who work on the big-scale composting, because I do think they're needed. The bigger facilities can handle meat and, dairy that you don't necessarily want to put in your backyard or community bin, or even some of these compostable products. A lot of community composters don't want, compostable plastics in their little community, garden. They don't want to deal with that. So we do need a diverse strategy. But on the backyard side, we are now finding out that communities who give their residents backyard bins, that households are now more aware of the food they're throwing away and are like, reducing their food waste. Mm-hmm. So they're saving money.
We hope that's the first feedback loop, is not wasting, right?
Right, not wasting, and saving money. So there's huge cost savings for communities and for people.
So for citizens, which I'm agreeing with you on that one, it makes you more a part of the structure of nature, if you will.
Right.
If you can't reuse, you're suggesting buy compostable, you mentioned party kits, or make that choice when you're doing an individual like to-go container find a container that's compostable, it's going to go back into nature.
Right. If you can't reuse.
If you can't reuse.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you so much for those tips. Thank you very, very much for joining us today, Brenda. We look forward to speaking with you again soon.
You're welcome. Thank you.